Hey guys, it's Dean. Welcome to the Star Carnival, a festive event made for casual gamers who bought a Wii and naturally purchased a game for a franchise they probably haven't played since the 90s. It's hilarious how many people I know who to this day tell me their favorite Mario Party titles were 2 and 8, but it's not really that surprising. The Wii, unlike the GameCube, was bought by everyone, and I mean everyone, so I can only imagine buying Mario Party 8 was a no-brainer for a large chunk of the Wii owners. And I mean, why wouldn't they? The vast majority of Nintendo fans from the 64 era look back at Mario Party and Mario Kart 2 as two of their most enjoyed multiplayer experiences. So when everyone got a Wii, buying Mario Party 8 was inevitable. I had a similar experience. I'm gonna let you in on a little secret. I never owned a GameCube. One of my good friends did, and as a result I played a lot of its games. But I did the PS2 and Xbox sidestep before coming back to the Wii. Luckily the Wii was backwards compatible, so I got to experience many GameCube games as a result. But the point is, Mario Party 8 was the first time I had actually owned a Mario Party title since Mario Party 2. And boy was I happy to buy it. I watched a ton of trailers and videos online leading up to the release, and I knew I'd be buying one as soon as it came out. And I remember it being an amazing game. Motion controls and Mario Party seemed to be meant for each other, and the fun that I had playing Mario Party 8 during the Wii era was something hard to replicate. It looks ugly to me now, but I remember thinking the art style looked so real and it was so much better for the series. Boy was I wrong. I'm glad it only lasted one game, and Nintendo quickly went back to the colorful art style in Mario Party 9. But I'm not here to analyze the graphics. I'm here to discuss whether or not this game deserves a lot of the praise it gets, or if it's only as fondly remembered as it is because it happened to land on Nintendo's best-selling home console, the cultural phenomenon that your grandpa is still playing with all of its motion control glory. I think I'll get this out of the way early because it's something that I see as a strike against this game a lot more now than I did back then. The game steered way too hard into the motion controls. And I'm not even talking about the minigames, or the fact that you have to flick your Wii remote to roll your dice block. I can forgive those two aspects because this was an early Wii title, so of course they were going to lean heavily on motion controls. No, the part that bugged me the most was that everything involved motion controls. You couldn't even pause and just use the D-pad to select anything. You often couldn't just hit A or plus to skip navigating the menu. No, you always had to aim your cursor at the sensor bar and click what it was you wanted it to do. And going back to that today is archaic. Especially after playing all of the Mario Party games that have released before and after it that at least had conventional controls when it came to menus. It's not something that I'm going to hold too heavily against the title though, because I want to analyze the game primarily based on the game mechanics, but I did want to discuss it because it was extremely frustrating for me when I revisited this title. But don't worry, I'll bring up motion controls again when I discuss the minigames since I consider those relevant to the game mechanics and worth critiquing. That being said, let's get started. If you place this game side by side with the later GameCube titles, you'll quickly realize there were quite a few changes to the general board play in this title. The boards only contain red, blue, Happening, DK, and Bowser spaces, with the only new addition being the Lucky space, which warps you to a separate area that usually allows you to collect coins and a free star. This would have worked in the N64 era games because the boards were littered with Banks or Bowser and Boo that you could pass to try to mix up. But even those games had one or two more eventful spaces like Chance Time or single player minigames. This also would have worked in GameCube era for the most part because players could throw orbs on the board to shake things up a bit. The problem here is that Mario Party 8's boards add very little variety to the board, and you can't throw your items on the board either, which in this game are known as candy. It's also important to note that DK spaces alternate with Bowser spaces every time they're landed on, so it's really only one space, and they don't lead to any special minigames either. DK will do something good and Bowser will do something bad, but I'll get into that when I discuss the boards. As far as the candy is concerned, it's a decent lineup. You have the usual double, triple, and slow and warp candies, 2 candies that'll make a player lose half of their coins or let you steal coins from another player, a few pieces of candy that'll let you collect coins for every space you move, steal coins from players as you pass, send players you pass back to the start, steal candy from players you pass, or make a player you pass lose half their coins. Then you have a dueling candy and 2 more candies that are specific to Bowser's board. The nice thing here is that the candies transform your character, which is a nice aesthetic touch. I'd delve deeper into these items and how they look and work, but to be honest, this far along into the retrospective, I think you get the idea by now. There are some obvious omissions from the last game, like candy that'll transport you to the star and whatnot. It should also be noted that candies that would normally select a player at random now have a dart roulette wheel that you time by flicking your Wii remote forward. I found that you should flick your controller right when the wheel is at the space before the one you want it to land on. If you can master that, none of these really become random anymore. The bonus stars are the same as last game. Red, green, candy, minigame, shopping, and running, and 3 of them are chosen at random at the end. Not to repeat myself too much from the Mario Party 7 video, but I'm okay with this system. All you have to do is roll high, win minigames, buy and use as much candy as possible, all of which you're likely to be doing anyway. And then for strategy, you should keep track of who has landed on green and red spaces to determine if you should try and land on one if you have the option. There are no chance time or hidden blocks in this game, which is a shame. Battle minigames occur at random in lieu of 4-player minigames, and duels are only triggered if a player uses duel candy and rolls enough to bump into another player on the board. Either coins or stars will be rewarded after the duel is done, determined by a roulette wheel. If it sounds like I'm jumping through a lot of the mechanics, it's because I am. Everything here is significantly watered down compared to previous titles. The only aspects that have remained the same as some of the earlier titles are the ones that kinda sucked, like battle minigames counting towards the minigame star total. I mean heck, even the last 5 turn event doesn't do anything but offer the player and last a duel candy and places a coin over each space on the board. Really, the only somewhat creative mechanic during board play is at the lucky space, and honestly, it's kind of a lame addition. Seems like it was shoehorned in just to make the gameplay seem a little bit more interesting. Blooper and Hammer Bros are the 2 new characters, so we're at 14 characters now if you're keeping track, which is nice. I like the variety and it's good to have a bigger cast. But aside from that, I gotta say, looking at this game based off everything I've just said up to this point, it's kind of a disappointing title. However, we need to go through the boards to see if we can salvage the game. First up is DK's Treetop Temple. If you've been following along since the first video, I'm sure you've picked up by now that I'm a big fan of a standard Mario Party board. It might be wrong of me to call them standard though, since the boards have had so many gimmicks over the years that it might be hard to pinpoint 1 or 2 board types as standard, but what I mean by that is that I enjoy boards that have multiple junctions and routes to plow through while chasing the star. To give you an idea, it'd be boards like DK's Jungle Adventure in Mario Party 1, or Western Land and even Space Land in Mario Party 2. Certain other boards like Rainbow Dream or even Pirate Land would also fit the bill, since they're boards that you can maneuver around fairly easily and change paths on a whim. Really, I just enjoy star hunting boards that have fun gimmicks that don't strangle the player if a star changes places. DK's Treetop Temple is a standard board in that aspect, and it's a good one at that. It's also the only board of its kind in Mario Party 8. I know many people don't really rate it that high, but I think it's because those fans like boards with more obvious gimmicks. Either way, this board is probably my favorite Mario Party 8 and is one I go back to fondly. The vertical alignment of the board is a nice touch and makes the board stick out a bit from other standard boards. The alternating DK and Bowser spaces will send you to the star or change the star location respectively, which is a bit underwhelming, but this is an introductory board, so what do you expect? Green spaces exist that will show barrels chasing players in their path back to a certain point. The remaining green spaces will do the usual stuff like take coins or candy away from you or transport you to another part of the board while giving you some coins. And finally, if you pass by a barrel cannon, you can pay 5 coins to have it transport you to a different location around the board, ideally used to get you closer to the star. Again, this is a fairly simple board, so whether or not you like it will be contingent on how you feel about the basic boards. Next up, you have Goomba's Booty Boardwalk, which, if I'm not mistaken, is the 3rd pirate-themed level of the series so far. A lot of people love this board just for the simple fact that Mario Sunshine's Piantas are the NPCs. And they'll even launch you forward up the board if you land on a happening space next to them. This is crucial because the board layout here is completely linear, and your goal is to get to the end of this board where a star is waiting for you. Along the path, you'll also pass by dolphins that'll offer to move you a seemingly random number of spaces forward for a random price. You'll usually want to pay up because the board is long and the star at the end is free, and then you'll be flown back to the start of the board. The other big event that could happen on this board is the happening spaces right at the end that, if landed on, will send you soaring all the way back to the start, similar to what would happen in Pagoda Peak in Mario Party 7. This board actually has my favorite aesthetic in the entire game. I also like how the camera is angled almost in a third-person perspective. It really makes traversing up the boardwalk seem like a much greater task. I might have said this board was my favorite if it wasn't for the fact that the star was free at the end. As it stands, the best strategy to win this game is simply to roll the highest. If you're lucky enough to have the dolphins move you forward for a lower price or landing on a chuckster space, then you might be able to leapfrog your opponents who are rolling better than you. But in my experience, the person who wins minigames and rolls the highest is at the greatest advantage, because they'll be able to purchase candies that'll double or triple their dice blocks and pay dolphins whatever they're asking. This board really should have had alternating stars and czars at the end, like Mario's Rainbow Castle in Mario Party 1 and Castaway Bay in Mario Party 6 did, and potentially 3 or 4 detours along the board that could slow you down if there was a czar waiting. It's bizarre to me that Hudson has only used this mechanic in Rainbow Castle and Castaway Bay because it's a very fun stall and blitz game mode. And in Castaway Bay it was kind of ruined because the czar ended up making you lose a star instead of coins like it did in Rainbow Castle. But anyway, this board had a lot of potential and tons to be enjoyed about in my opinion, but got ruined because of a free star at the end. Aside from DK's Treetop Temple, King Boo's Haunted Hideaway comes closest to being a traditional star hunting board. You traverse a haunted house going blindly from room to room in hopes that you'll end up at a star location. Every time you enter a new room, a section of the map is unlocked so players can get an idea of where they've been and know which direction to go. When someone finally earns a star, the haunted house will kick everyone out and mix all the rooms up again, making the puzzle essentially start over. The gimmick is interesting and could lead to a fun board game, but in my opinion it was ruined because of the repetitive nature of dragging everyone out to the start again when someone gets a star. I can see what they were going for here. It's a haunted house with multiple rooms, so you don't want to just give everyone a map so they know which way to go. but I can't help but feel that they could have achieved the same success with a couple of small changes that would have arguably been more enjoyable. Basically, this board has 12 rooms, or so to speak, that always look the same. Imagine a 12-piece block puzzle with 3 rows of 4 columns that can be rearranged into various patterns. 9 of the pieces have entrances and exits, with some of them containing junctions. One piece is outside of the haunted house and is the starting space, another piece is the star location, and the last piece is a pitfall that sends a player back to start, or hosts DK or Bowser if a player lands on their space before someone makes it to the room. If DK is there, he'll give you a star. If Bowser is there, he'll take one away. If I was somehow given a chance to fix this board, I'd do away with the entrance, star, and pitfall rooms, and either replace them with 3 rooms more similar to the other 9, or just let the board be the other 9 rooms. The DK Bowser space can reward or punish you rather than block the pitfall, just like it does on all of the other boards, and the star will randomly move between blue spaces like it does on all of the other boards. Every time you start a game or a player gets a star, the 9 or 12 piece puzzle can be rearranged randomly, as is already the case. Whenever the board is shuffled, players remain on the same spaces they're on while the rooms are reshuffled. The map can also still be reshuffled this way and force players to move blindly between rooms as they uncover the star location. This allows the game to not frequently feel like it's restarting. It might also lead to a player getting lucky and leaving the room directly into the star room, but I think that'll add to the fun, and you can make that less likely to occur if you stick with a 12-room format instead of 9. Anyway, I know this is all just a hypothetical board layout I'm sharing, but I'm really only sharing it to show that I think this type of board could actually be really fun, if they just tweaked it just a bit. Because even without the tweaks, this board has WOMs blocking paths for coins and event spaces that punish players or teleport them, so there's plenty enough going on to make it entertaining. It's just unfortunate that it feels like the game restarts every so often. I'm going to be a stickler for a second and say that Shy Guy's Perplex Express is not the same as Goomba's Booty Boardwalk. I've spent the past 13 years hearing every reviewer say that they don't like that the game made 2 of the same type of boards and yelling at my screen because they're not the same, although they are similar. Goomba's Booty Boardwalk is a straight line to the end that takes you back to the beginning, whereas Shy Guy's Perplex Express is more similar to a giant linear rectangle that could potentially see you taking a shortcut to the space parallel to your location, given you landing on a happening space. That space can either make you circle back to the star quicker or miss out on the star altogether depending on whether you're before or after the star. There are also events that cause the map to reshuffle segments of the board a bit to either move you closer or further away from the star, again, depending on whether you passed the star already or not. The reason people mistake this board as being another straight line is because you start at the end of the train, work your way left to the front where the star is, but you also have to work your way back to the beginning, which fundamentally changes the board in my opinion. It'd be more similar to Goomba's Booty Boardwalk if the boardwalk had the star at the dead center instead of at the end. You could argue I'm splitting hairs, and you'd probably be right, but I think the mechanic changes enough to make it feel like a different type of board. At the end of the day though, it is still a board that sees you competing for higher dice rolls to get to the star first, so it's not that much different, but if rolling the highest number to receive a star first is all you're basing it off of, then you could argue that every freaking Mario Party board has the same mechanic, and in that case, why the heck am I even doing this retrospective? Also, the stars cost 20 coins on this board, so you're not simply rewarded just for making it to the end, you have to actually be a half-decent Mario Party player along the way. The DK and Bowser space will replace the star with either DK or Bowser, in which case DK will give the first player to reach him a star, or Bowser will take a star away from the first player to reach him. Since the star does cost 20 coins, I don't feel as strongly as Goomba's Booty Boardwalk to just automatically alternate between Czars and stars, as I don't feel it's necessary. Actually, I think the board is fine for what it is setting out to do. You could maybe implement the mechanic where the star changes prices every time it's earned like seen in other boards to make it a bit more enticing, but I think the fact that you can move from the bottom and top of the train or be reshuffled around in your train car makes that gimmick unnecessary as well. All of that being said, however, this board is about on par with Boos and Goombas in that it's decent but not really all that exciting. Man, I'm actually exhausting myself discussing these boards. While discussing the mechanics, I really thought this would end up being a short review for a mediocre title, but I guess I have a lot more to say about the boards than I expected. The worst part is I'm only just now getting to Koopa's Tycoon Town, and you're all about to stop watching this video and unsubscribe. Screw this board and screw Windmillville and Mario Party 7. This playstyle is not Mario Party. I know I'm getting ahead of myself here because I haven't even talked about the board mechanics yet, but those of you who know what I'm talking about, know what I'm talking about. There are a bunch of hotels littered around this town that you invest coins into. The player who invests the most coins by the end of the game gets a star for that building. The more coins invested in the building, the more stars it's worth. The only thing I actually like about this board is the setting, which is super unique for Mario Party. But this gameplay style is not Mario Party, it's a side mode at best, and I have nothing more to say about it. Speaking of side modes at best, Bowser's Warped Orbit. This board took the star stealing gimmick from Snowflake Lake and made it objectively worse. The routes are more streamlined, and you steal stars by purchasing items that allow you to roll more dice blocks and steal from whomever you pass. Also, the direction everyone's moving alternates, so if you steal a star from someone, there's a good chance they're going to steal it right back from you, which makes the board rely way too heavily on luck. There are small little detours in the giant circle of a map that allow you to move it one way or the other to maybe get lucky and avoid being robbed, but they're so small and insignificant and hardly protect you. I knew I had a problem with this board the second I saw that it was a Bowser board that wasn't lava themed. If I have to say one nice thing about this board, it's that the camera is similar to Goomba's Booty Boardwalk's over-the-shoulder camera, which for some reason I enjoy. But that's it. A terrible ord to end off a board analysis of a game of mediocre boards. Luckily, I still have the minigames to talk about, and usually the best way to make a Mario Party game seem better than it is to just talk about the minigames. And I'm not gonna lie, the short cutscenes before and after minigames are a guilty pleasure of mine. As far as the 4-player minigames go, I think they do a decent enough job implementing motion or pointer controls without ruining the experience. Some of them do feel a bit repetitive or similar, but what do you expect from the first Mario Party game with motion controls? Actually, I'm inclined to compare this to Mario Party 1, where you'd often see minigames being way too similar since they were just starting to get their feet wet with the minigames and button controls. I'd say Scooter Pursuit is probably the worst offender of forced motion controls, when buttons would have been significantly better, with 2 or 3 other minigames feeling like they needed to wait until Wii Motion Plus was a thing before making them. Flip the Chimp and In the Nick of Time come to mind, but games like Swing Kings, Punch a Bunch do a good job, and the pointer control minigames are a treat as long as you're not having issues with your sensor bar. And to be fair to Hudson Soft, the 3 out of the 18 4-player minigames that use button controls are really fun. The 2 that involve pointing are fun, and 8 of the remaining minigames I would classify as acceptable motion control minigames. Funny enough, Rudder Madness is so boring but implements the motion controls perfectly because you move at the pace of a snail, whereas Alpine Assault, while very fun, is harder to play because it requires accurate motion control timing, something that we hadn't quite mastered yet. But on to the 2v2 minigames. I'd say they did a better job with these than they did the 4-player minigames. Bumper Balloons is probably the hardest to control, but I still enjoy it quite a bit for some reason. I just hate when I accidentally pop my own balloon because of wonky controls. 4 of the minigames have button controls and they're really fun, and one of them involves a pointer, which again works very well. I tend to enjoy Paint Misbehavin' and King of the Thrill the most, both of which are button controls though, so that probably says something. Something that really surprised me is that of the 9 1 vs 3 minigames, the only one that really feels unbalanced by design is Chump Rope, which involves the one being able to turn the jump rope as fast or slow as they want to mess with the other players. Once again, the minigames vary in control styles, but they're all actually pretty good except for Power Trip, which actually benefits from the bad motion controls the one player has. The motion controls for the one are so difficult that it basically somewhat balances the game. If you can figure out the motion controls as the one, you're guaranteed to win. If you can't get a grip on it, then the 3 will win. It's a poor minigame as a result, but it's not as one-sided as Chump Rope. But still, that means 7 out of the 9 1 vs 3 minigames are solid and balanced enough, which is pretty decent return for Mario Party title. And they all require an acceptable amount of coordination for the team of 3, so that's something I really enjoy. What's hilarious is that this game contains 27 dual minigames. Yeah, I didn't stutter. 8 of those 27 are just 2-player versions of the 4-player minigames, but that still means they designed 19 whole dual minigames, which is absurd. To be fair, they did this for the single-player mode since that's 1v1, but I don't understand why they didn't just make that mode have 4 players and give us more non-dual minigames. But it is what it is. For what it's worth, the package of dual minigames is fun. It's just unfortunate that you'll face so few duels, so you won't get to enjoy these minigames to the fullest, and some of them would have made for great 4-player minigames. The battle minigames are a hit. There's only 5 of them, and really only one of them is fully luck-based. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that Cut from the Team is the only luck-based battle minigame in the entire series that could potentially measure up to the intensity of Bowser's Big Blast. And given how many people purchased Mario Party 8, I'm willing to wager that it's almost as iconic as Bowser's Big Blast is too. I love this minigame just for the crazy moments it creates. The other 5 minigames are fine too and fill in the quota for control styles, and I think they do a pretty good job at them. I have fundamental issues with Mario Party 8 for not implementing the nunchuck controls for the main game, or at the very least offering it as a control option. I can understand why they didn't. It's to keep the controls as simple and streamlined as possible for all the gaming skill levels. They did the same thing in Super on Switch by requiring Joy-Con controls. But some of the best minigames in Mario Party 8 are button controls, and unfortunately, a D-pad in the 3D space just doesn't work as smoothly as a joystick would. And I think they could have made the minigames a lot more unique with the nunchuck rather than having a few of them feel more of the same. It's just unfortunate because it seems like a missed opportunity to really show what the Wii is capable of with the full nunchuck Wiimote combo. And honestly, it hurts even more when you consider that they didn't implement it in Mario Party 9 or 10 either, but those games have bigger talking points. Anyway, wrapping this up is difficult. This was the last home console Mario Party title by Hudson Soft, and going into playing Mario Party 8 again, I really thought this would be the ultimate send-off before the games took a turn that many people consider to be for the worst. I have so many fond memories of Mario Party 8, and I went into this retrospective thinking about how I'll speak so greatly about it, and how it's so sad that this was the end of the original Mario Parties, but I can't in good conscience say that this was anything more than a poorly executed jump into the motion control era of the series. The minigames, while fun, don't really live up to the minigames in later games, because in the later games, they don't lean excessively into the motion controls. Therefore, the ones that do use motion controls are often a lot more enjoyable in the later games. Which means that even though I'd consider the minigames in Mario Party 8 their strongest point, they're not even as strong as the minigames in the later titles that are arguably worse than it is altogether. Couple that with the boring board mechanics and a semi-decent item system, and you have a Mario Party title that doesn't even come close to some of the better games in the series. In fact, of the first 8 titles, I'd rank this about as low as Mario Party 4. There's just not enough here to bring me back to play it. The board play isn't appealing enough to garner a playthrough with any of my friends unless they were really craving the nostalgia. It's honestly a good thing the Wii is backwards compatible because the GameCube games on the Wii are a much better Mario Party experience. Finally, my Hudson home console Mario Party ranking is complete, and I've had plenty of time to really think about it these past few months. I have a few ties in there, so a tier list would probably make more sense, but I'd rather wait until I'm done all of the Mario Party games to make the tier list. But as it stands, 2 and 7 are in first, 5 is second, 6 is third, 3 and 1 are fourth, and 4 and 8 are fifth. I don't want to end this video on a sour note, so I'll remind you that all of these games are actually fun, even 4 and 8, but they just aren't as fun as the other titles in my opinion. Now luckily, Mario Party 8 was not the last Mario Party title for Hudson. They released another one later on in the year after they released number 8. So if you were a Nintendo DS Mario Party fan, you got the better Mario Party released that year. While Mario Party 8 feels like it could be a poor sequel to the 64 era titles, DS feels like it was a sequel to the GameCube era titles. And I'll discuss whether or not it lives up to those games in my next retrospective. So be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you can stay up to date. Thanks for watching. Dean, out.